Chapter 7. Learn what you can from the paperwork. We, or at least I, dealt with debtors in different ways according to the circumstances surrounding each situation. There were a few times when the lender would say no contact with debtor. That usually meant that the client was fed up with the debtor. They didn't want to deal with him anymore. They'd heard too many stories. That meant the lien holder wanted the vehicle. The debtor might habitually be late on payments. The debtor may have threatened the client or just made him mad. Either way, you don't want to talk to the debtor, and no deals are going to be made. You just get the vehicle and go. But if the finance company provided you with some information, it's going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in that situation. Usually, all you had was the record of the default. In other words, you had a record of when they made their last payment. Now, if the payment is only a month or two behind, I'm going to treat that account a little bit differently than I'm going to treat an account that's been 6 or 8 months behind, and especially if they've moved. 2 months might be an oversight or an emergency situation. 8 months is something altogether different. 8 months behind and moving out of state, that's a big red flag. It seems like this person might be trying to steal the vehicle or at least use it for a while without paying for it. That guy with the van in the earlier chapter in Sheffield was a good example of that. Making contact with him before I repossess the vehicle is not going to be productive, so I treated him that way. The client didn't say no contact, but the guy was so far behind and he'd moved and not left a forwarding address that he's not Mr. Honesty, and I'm not going to talk to him. So that's why I tried to get the vehicle, without having to deal with him. You can sometimes tell a lot about the situation simply by reading the repo order and the details of the default. I was in Russellville, Alabama one morning looking for a blue Astro van. The bank was in Illinois somewhere and had tracked the debtor down to Russellville, Alabama. Now, the paperwork I had said that they were, 5, 6 months behind, and they had moved to Alabama and not given a forwarding address. And so to me, to a thinking person, they're trying to be dishonest. Okay, so I had an address out in the country. It was quite a way out in the country, so I headed to the given address. About halfway there, I met a blue Astro van with Illinois plates going in the opposite direction. Well, now that's too much of a coincidence not to be my vehicle. It had to be my vehicle. I'm sure of it. So I let them pass. I didn't look. I just kind of went on along my way, and as soon as they got out of sight, I turned around. I didn't make eye contact with them because I didn't want to tip my hand. I'll tell you more about this later. But there's something about thinking about the debtor that's going to cause that debtor to think about you, and that's another story. Have you ever thought about somebody that you ain't seen in years, and all of a sudden you hear from them? Well, that's got something to do with that, and you just have to be careful. Everybody think, I'll tell you more about that later. But once that blue Astro van was out of sight, I turned around and followed them at a distance. They went to the Walmart on Highway 43 in Russellville. The whole family got out and went in. Once they got inside, I drove over and I hopped out and checked the VIN number on the van to be sure that it was my vehicle, and it was. And so I hooked it up and I left. The first thing we did, and we always did after a repossession, was call the local police department or sheriff's department to report the vehicle repossessed. We wanted to inform the police that the vehicle had not been stolen, it had been repossessed. It saved the police and us a lot of headaches. If the debtor calls and said, hey, my vehicle's been stolen, they can always look and say, no, it was repossessed, take it up with the finance company. I called the police and secured the vehicle and headed back to Falkville in my storage lot. And I've always wondered what that family did when they came out of Walmart and they couldn't find their van. And don't think that I'm too heartless. I know I didn't really feel bad about that one. There are some that I felt bad about, but I judged by the information that I had, and I took the van without making contact. There have been many times that I've been over backwards to help a debtor, And sometimes you just go with your gut feeling, and they shouldn't have been trying to get away with that van without paying for it. Say amen right there. Okay, let me quit.